The old High Septon told my father the king's laws are one thing, and the lords of gods another. Trueborn children are made in the marriage bed, and are blessed by the father and the mother, but bastards are born of lust and weakness, he said. King Aegon decreed that his bastards were not bastards, but he could not change their true nature. The High Septon said all bastards are born of betrayal. Egg to Duncan the Tall, a knight at the Seven Kingdoms, the sworn sword. Something that I think often gets overlooked in the wider story of A Song of Ice and Fire and the world of Westeros is the important role bastards play. I'm not just talking about highborn bastards either, even some baseborn, who have left huge marks on the trajectory of the history of Westeros. Some of the key and defining events in the world lore that allow for the events of the main books to actually happen all exist because of bastards. The likes of the Dance of the Dragons and the Blackfyre rebellions in particular playing a huge role in shaping Westeros. So many plotlines in the books are still actively being impacted due to these events. And of course, in the main books, we have several key characters who are bastards. We have characters pretending to be bastards, bastards who in fact may not even be bastards. And of course, how can we forget the bastards of Robert Baratheon, whose mere existence would be the key to lighting the spark of the War of the Five Kings. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at who I think the biggest and most important bastards in the history of Westeros, and the role they played in shaping George R.R. Martin's world and story. My shield, my stalwart, my strong right hand, King Aegon the Conqueror, on Orys Baratheon, the world of ice and fire, the reigns of the dragon, the conquest. I think when talking about this topic, there is only really one place we can start. Orys Baratheon, the founder of House Baratheon and the bastard son of Lord Aerion Targaryen, which would make him the half-brother of Aegon, Visenya and Rhaenys, the three heads of the dragon who conquered Westeros. By most accounts, Orys and Aegon were close friends, with Orys playing a vital role during the conquest, in particular in the defeat of the Storm King, Argilac Durrandon, at the battle known as the Last Storm, where Orys defeated Argilac in single combat. As a reward for his role, Aegon would name him the new Lord of Storm's End and Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. He would go on to marry Argilac's only child, his daughter, Argella, and it was via this marriage the new House Baratheon would descend from. Orys would of course play a key role in the years after the conquest, acting as King Aegon's first hand of the king, a role that by all accounts he was well suited for. During 7 AC, Orys would play a part in the First Dornish War, but he and almost all of his men were captured by Lord Will of Will. Eventually, Orys was ransomed back to Aegon, however he had his sword hand cut off, so he could never raise it against Dorne again. Orys would famously tell his brother on his return to the capital that the king's hand needed a hand, and he would not have men joking about the king's stump, with him resigning his position. It was a huge loss to the realm, as he would return to Storm's End, taking a back seat for the rest of Aegon's reign. Orys would battle the forces of the Vulture King during the Second Dornish War in 37 AC, where he would capture and kill Lord Walter Will, the son of the man whom had removed his own hand. Orys would die on the road back to Storm's End, with his sons at his side, from a wound he got during the battle. It is said he died content with his revenge. The role and the legacy of Orys Baratheon is easy to see. He is of course the founder of House Baratheon, a house that would only grow in power and influence, and would be a mainstay in the politics of Westeros through Targaryen rule, with House Baratheon now becoming the kings of Westeros. But in reality, Orys is more than his legacy of House Baratheon. The dance was a war unlike any other fought in the long history of the Seven Kingdoms. Though armies marched and met in savage battles, much of the slaughter took place on the water, and especially in the air, as dragon fought dragon with tooth and claw and flame. It was a war marked by stealth and murder and betrayal as well, a war fought in shadows and stairwells and council chambers and castle yards, with knives and lies and poison. The writings of Archmaester Gyldain on the Dance of the Dragons, Fire and Blood, the Dying of the Dragons, the Blacks and the Greens. The Dance of the Dragons is really an interesting time when it comes to bastards. Well, for two reasons. Many assume that part of the Green's arguments that Rhaenyra is not the rightful heir is the idea that her sons by Laenor Velaryon were in reality fathered by Harwin Strong, and thus making them bastards. But that's not really what the Green's argument for Aegon II is. It's more based on the idea that Aegon, being Viserys' eldest son, is the rightful heir due to male proximity primogeniture, and the precedents set by the Great Council of 101 AC and hundreds of years of precedents before that. Now, this video is not about who is right and who is wrong when it comes to the Dance of the Dragons. I've tackled that topic before, but the bastard accusations were more used as an attack on Rhaenyra's character, and fueling this idea that Jacaerys Velaryon as her heir would mean a bastard would sit to the Iron Throne. So no matter who you side with, the Blacks or the Greens, even if you're in the minority who believe Jacaerys, Lucerys and Joffrey were truly Laenor's sons, the accusations of bastardy and the impact that has really reflects the importance of the social impact of bastards. The Dragonseeds often too get overlooked when it comes to how the Dance of the Dragons played out. The reality is, without the actions of all of the Dragonseeds, the Dance of the Dragons plays out in a very different way, with a very different outcome. An outcome that is impossible to predict due to the sheer scale of the butterfly effect. The definition of what a Dragonseed is sort of a bit vague. It's clear that Targaryen bastards are definitely Dragonseeds. So, for example, Orys Baratheon. How much descendants of Dragonseeds can claim to be a Dragonseed is not wholly clear. We know it's implied that Hugh Hammer might be an example, as Fire and Blood does imply second or third generation Dragonseeds still count as part of the group from the initial descriptions of the Dragonseed population of Dragonstone. Dragons were at the core of Targaryen power, and the decision to allow bastards to claim dragons was a bold move by Rhaenyra, some might argue desperate. The initial idea was successful, with the Blacks having an overwhelming number of dragon riders over the Greens. The issue of letting effectively unknown people with unknown character claim a dragon would come back to bite Rhaenyra, but more so it would erode the mystical image behind the dragons and House Targaryen. Dragonseeds, they call them. It's not a thing to boast of, but it has happened. Maybe perhaps more than we would care to admit. Such children are cherished though. King Jaehaerys Targaryen, to his wife Queen Alysanne, Fire and Blood, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, their triumphs and tragedies. You can split the Dragonseeds into three groups, each having an impact on the Dance of the Dragons in different ways. Off-White and Hugh Hammer, who claim the dragons Silverwing and Vermithor, are almost fitting the stereotypical view of bastards by the highborn, dangerous, untrustworthy, and with a weak character. Off-White is described as a lazy drunk who could not read or write, and Hugh Hammer too was not able to write. But being a blacksmith's son, he was huge and strong and a brute of a man. Through both of these men, nearly all of the negative stereotypes of bastards are displayed. But the irony is, they were designed to exemplify the negative aspects, as a mirror to the convention-breaking bastards like Addam and Alan of Hull. Something I predict we will see in House of the Dragon Season 3, and something that I think has been teased in Season 2, is their role in the first Battle of Tumbleton, and how often Hugh switching sides changes the tide of the war completely and puts a hell of a lot of pressure on Rhaenyra's rule in King's Landing, deeply influencing the riots and the Moon of Madness. I do wonder, however, how the show is going to handle Hugh and Off's Tumbleton arc, given how different the approach they're seeming to take is. On the other hand, you have the likes of Addam of Hull. While he, along with the other Dragonseeds, are ordered to be killed by Rhaenyra after Olf and Hugh defected, perhaps one of Rhaenyra's most vital errors, his true nature and character would prevail. Addam was the eldest of the bastard sons of Corlys Velaryon, with Addam and his younger brother Alan being legitimized by Rhaenyra at Corlys's request after Addam had managed to claim the dragon Seasmoke, with Addam thus becoming Corlys's heir. But despite Rhaenyra calling for his head, Addam would prove her and many who question the character of bastards wrong, remaining loyal, determined to prove not all bastards are turncloaks. The singers say that Addam flew from King's Landing to the God's Eye, where he landed on the sacred Isle of Faces and took counsel with the legendary Green Men. Known facts say that he then flew far and fast, descending upon castles, great and small throughout the Riverlands, to lords loyal to Rhaenyra, to attempt to piece together an army. By the time Addam was ready to descend on Tumbleton, he had almost 4,000 men at his back. He attacked Tumbleton at night, taking the Green forces completely unawares. Addam would lose his life in the battle, but did prove his loyalty and that of his brother Alan. Even if that loyalty was never recognised by Rhaenyra, given how dire her situation had become, it is how Addam will always be remembered, with the words engraved on his tomb on Driftmark. Nettles is a bit of an odd one, because we're not even sure if she really counts as a Dragonseed, or just a member of the small folk who had the skill and determination to claim a dragon. But if she were a bastard, or just a member of the small folk, her story does exemplify the idea that even a lowly bastard can still rise high in the social structure that discriminates directly against them. But also, I think, along with Addam, she really shows the reader just how fragile Rhaenyra's mental state became after the First Battle of Tumbleton, as King's Landing becomes more and more chaotic with several riots, the Shepherd, and the eventual Moon of Madness, which forces her to flee to Dragonstone and her inevitable fate. I do want to also briefly mention Gaemon Palehair, who at the time of the dance was a toddler, and one of the 3 kings raised up by the small folk during the Moon of Madness. While we cannot say for sure who his father is, or even if they are a Targaryen, there is some suggestion that he is likely one of Aegon II's numerous bastards. The reason Gaemon jumps out at me is his role post-dance, becoming a cupbearer and friend and companion for King Aegon III during the first few years of his regency. But what puzzles me is if Gaemon was truly the son of Aegon II, it seems very strange he would have been kept alive when Aegon III's rule was very fragile during the regency period. He could very easily become a figurehead for enemies of the crown to rally to, which to me suggests that Gaemon might not actually be a Dragonseed at all, but just a whore's babe. Aegon IV legitimized all of his bastards on his deathbed, and how much pain, grief and war and murder grew from that. The Blackfyre pretenders troubled the Targaryens for 5 generations, until Barristan the Bold slew the last of them on the Stepstones, Catelyn Stark to Robb Stark, A Storm of Swords chapter 45, Catelyn 5. We now jump forward to 172 AC, and the reign of King Aegon IV. I think there are 2 key reasons why bastards still have such a negative reputation among the ruling class of Westeros. The impact of the betrayal of the Dragonseeds of White and Hugh Hammer during the Dance of the Dragons, and the sheer chaos Aegon IV caused with his unknowable amount of bastards, which not only led to decades of on-off civil war, but directly set the stage for the events in the timeline of the main books. King Aegon IV had 9 recognised mistresses and 13 known bastard children. There are 2 key words here, recognised and known. There were countless women Aegon IV slept with, and likely, as a result, unimaginable amount of bastards fathered by him, even more than Aegon himself could have ever have known. But some of his bastards would be born to high-born women and came to be known as the Great Bastards. They include Daemon Waters, later Blackfyre, born to Aegon's cousin, Princess Dana; Aegor Rivers, born to Barbara Bracken; Maya Rivers, Gwenys Rivers, and Brendan Rivers, later known as Bloodraven, born to Melissa Blackwood; and Shiera Seastar, born to the Lady Serene of Lys. Daemon, Aegon, and Brendan, and to some extent Shiera, would all play a part in the shaping of the future of Westeros as we know it today. On his death in 184 AC, Aegon did the very unexpected and legitimized all of his bastards, and thus would set the fuel to the fire that would become the Blackfyre Rebellions. Aegor Rivers, better known to history as Bittersteel, being half Targaryen, had purple eyes but the black hair of his Bracken mother. He looked like a warrior, tall, muscular, but was lean and fast. After his legitimization, he created his own heraldry, the red stallion of House Bracken, with black dragon wings on a golden field, snorting fire. Aegor was said to have been angry all of his life, and never smiled. Reportedly, he was a hard man who had little use for anything beyond war, and war is what he would spend his life fueling. We know that Aegor especially loathed his younger half-brother, Brendan Rivers, and Brendan's mother, Melissa Blackwood, who had replaced Aegor's mother, Barbara Bracken, as King Aegon IV's mistress. The disdain was also there on Brendan's part as well, but it was seen the rivalry between the brothers went much deeper than family feuds. Brendan was albino, and thus he had milk-white skin, long white hair and red eyes. On the right side of his face he had a red wine-stained birthmark that extended from his throat to his right cheek. The birthmark is why they called him Bloodraven, as it said it looked somewhat like a raven drawn in blood. Brendan was not as tall or muscular as his half-brothers, Daemon and Aegor, but was considerably more cunning. Because of his skin sensitivity to light, Bloodraven went about cloaked and hooded, which is added to his mysterious and feared aura. Brendan was rumoured to be a sinister sorcerer and spymaster, who effectively ruled the kingdom with spies and spells, as Lord Bloodraven. A popular riddle with the small folk asked, how many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have? 1,000 eyes and one. Now here is the, in my view, true heart of the quarrel between Aegor and Brendan. At some point Brendan became the lover of their younger half-sister, Shiera Seastar. Shiera was a renowned beauty. She had a heart-shaped face and thick, curly Targaryen silver-gold hair. Although she had two mismatched eyes, one dark blue, the other bright green, it was said this apparent defect only enhanced her beauty. Shiera was a great reader, even at an early age, spoke several languages, and maintained a large and arcane library. She was also reputed to share her mother, Serene's, skill in the dark arts and sorcery, something she also shared in common with Bloodraven. It appears that Aegor became jealous of the relationship between Brendan and Shiera, and why it seems this feud was so much more than your typical Bracken-Blackwood affair. What made tensions even worse between the brothers is while Bloodraven became the trusted advisor and spy master to King Daemon II, and eventually even hand under King Orys I, Aegor had become a huge supporter of Daemon Blackfyre and been one of the influential figures who persuaded Daemon to press his claim to the throne. During the final battle of the First Blackfyre Rebellion, Bloodraven would kill Daemon and his twin sons with his weirwood bow before fighting a legendary duel with Aegor, who had picked up the famed sword Blackfyre from Daemon's body and led a mad charge at Brendan's men. It is implied that Bloodraven was wielding Darksister during the fight. Not many details are known, but Bloodraven lost an eye during the duel, and Aegor managed to flee. Aegor would remain a fierce Blackfyre supporter his whole life, and would flee to Essos with Daemon's surviving sons, and play a key role in the 3rd and 4th Blackfyre rebellions. He would also found the legendary sellsword company, the Golden Company. Bloodraven, as we have said, would act as the spy master and hand of the king, and continue fighting the Blackfyre threat for the next 3 decades, before being sent to the Wall to join the Night's Watch by King Aegon V for the murder of Aenys Blackfyre, where he would later become Lord Commander of the Watch, before going missing beyond the Wall. In A Dance with Dragons, Bran Stark discovers Brendan is still alive as the Three-Eyed Crow, the last Greenseer living with the Children of the Forest in a cave beyond the Wall. Bloodraven becomes Bran's mentor in the art of greensight and skin changing. What makes Bloodraven and Bittersteel so important is I think it's possible the Blackfyre Rebellion does not happen without the deeply personal feud between the brothers, with them using their own loyalties towards Daemon and Daemon as an extension for their own rivalry. Daemon was the name Dana gave to this child, for Prince Daemon had been the wonder and terror of his age, and in later days that was seen as a warning of what the boy would become, Maester Yandel, on the birth of Daemon Blackfyre, the world of ice and fire, the Targaryen kings, Aegon IV. Of course we need to also talk about Daemon Blackfyre, because he very much is so much more than your average bastard, given he was the son of King Aegon IV and Princess Dana. He was effectively a Targaryen in all but name. Aegon IV had already given Daemon the Sword of Kings, Blackfyre, over his trueborn son, Daeron, and the legitimization of Daemon at his father's death only heightened the whispers that perhaps Daemon was Aegon's true heir. Daemon would create House Blackfyre and take the heraldry of House Targaryen and reverse the colours to a black dragon on red. With the rumours that Daeron was not Aegon's son, but rather that of his brother Aemon the Dragon Knight, rumours that were likely unfounded, as well as King Daeron's concessions to the Dornish, to bring them into the realm, deeply unpopular with many of his lords, would cause many to see Daemon Blackfyre as the legitimate heir to King Aegon IV. There is also some suggestion he was in love with Princess Daenerys, Daeron's sister, before she was married off to Prince Maron Martell as part of Daeron's unification with Dorne. There are many reasons why the Blackfyre rebellions happened, but the legacy of Daemon Blackfyre is the division the war caused in Westeros. It tore the realm in two, between supporters of the Black Dragons and the Red, with those on the losing side of the war, bitter and resentful, while the victors unable to forgive the losses. But thanks to men like Aegor Rivers, the legacy of Daemon would plague Westeros for the next 30 years, with the second, third and fourth Blackfyre rebellions, led by Aegor and Daemon's surviving sons and grandsons. But the impact of the last Blackfyre, Maelys Blackfyre, in the War of the Ninepenny Kings cannot be understated, and shows us the true butterfly effect of King Aegon IV legitimizing the Great Bastards. Maelys lost his war, and with him House Blackfyre apparently died, but what the war did was bring the lords from all over Westeros together, where they forged bonds that would influence politics for the next 50 years, and allow for events such as Robert's Rebellion to happen. In the war, King Aerys II, the Mad King, then just a prince, would fight alongside the likes of Tywin Lannister, Steffon Baratheon, the father of Robert, Stannis and Renly, Jon Arryn, Hoster Tully, the father of Catelyn Stark, and we also think Rickard Stark, of course Ned Stark's father, as well as Quillian Greyjoy, and a Lord Baelish, who was the father of Littlefinger. And then there's Barristan Selmy, the very man who killed Maelys, among many other notable inclusions. The bonds and relationships forged in that war have a direct impact on the future of Westeros, and all of this is the legacy of Daemon Blackfyre. In a way, while Daemon lost the Blackfyre Rebellion, his legacy would still influence the downfall of House Targaryen. Robert was as generous with his coin as he was with his cock. Tyrion Lannister to Tywin Lannister. A Storm of Swords, Chapter 32. Tyrion 4. King Robert Baratheon and the idea of bastards go hand in hand as much as King Aegon IV and the Great Bastards. In fact, I would argue he's almost as synonymous with the idea as Aegon IV himself. Just Robert was not fool enough to legitimize all of his children on his deathbed. By the time in the main books, Robert had 15 known bastard children. The caveat here, just like Aegon IV, being known bastards. He likely had countless we never know about. But in the book, there are 5 named, 3 of which really matter to the story of A Song of Ice and Fire in any meaningful way. His eldest bastard is Maya Stone, whom he fathered while a ward of Jon Arryn in the Vale in his youth. For the most part, it seemed Robert did try to be a father to her as a child, until that is he became king. Even after that, he wanted to bring her to court, but chose not to not provoke the ire of his wife, Cersei Lannister, as well as for Maya's own safety. Needless to say, we see her interact with Catelyn Stark in the Vale, but it does seem like she may even have a minor role in Sansa's Winds of Winter storyline. We then have Gendry, who was born in King's Landing after Robert had become king. His mother a alehouse worker. Gendry of course plays a massive role in Arya Stark's storyline in A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords, as she travels across the Riverlands. He also would meet Brienne of Tarth, who quizzes him about his parentage, as she sees a resemblance to Renly Baratheon. It's clear, unlike some of his other half-siblings, Gendry does not know he is Robert's son. We then have Edric Storm, Robert's only recognised bastard, whom was a ward of Renly Baratheon at Storm's End. His mother was Delaena Florent, and thus highborn, which is why Robert was forced to acknowledge him. Robert would occasionally visit Edric at Storm's End, and send him name-day gifts. Edric would be key to Stannis Baratheon's plan to expose Cersei Lannister's children with Robert as Jaime Lannister's bastards. After taking Storm's End in the wake of Renly's death, Edric is taken to Dragonstone, where his king's blood is used by Melisandre to curse Robb Stark, Balon Greyjoy, and Joffrey Baratheon. Fearing for the boy's safety, Davos Seaworth would help him escape Dragonstone and get across the Narrow Sea. But Edric Storm shows us the real reason why Robert's bastards are so important, and why Jon Arryn and Stannis looking into the matter prior to Jon's death. They are walking proof to many that Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella are not Robert's children. You in theory could place Joffrey, Tommen and Myrcella on this list of bastards as well. However, the issue is, legally, as it stands, at least while Cersei and House Lannister are in control of King's Landing, they are Robert's children. Whoever Jon's mother had been, Ned must have loved her fiercely, for nothing Catelyn said would persuade him to send the boy away. It was the one thing she could never forgive him. She had come to love her husband with all her heart, but she never found it in her to love Jon. She might have overlooked a dozen bastards for Ned's sake, so long as they were out of sight. Jon was never out of sight, and as he grew, he looked more like Ned than any of the true-born sons she bore him. Somehow that made it worse. The thoughts of Catelyn Stark on Jon Snow, A Game of Thrones Chapter 6, Catelyn 2. For me, the duality of Jon Snow and Ramsay Snow really gets across to the reader the two sides of being a bastard. Through Jon Snow, we as a reader get to understand the difficult upbringing a bastard has, and how he's always running from that very part of himself. The shame, the stigma, and the lack of true identity. But his parentage is fundamentally key to his character and the person he becomes. The complicated love and relationship he has with his siblings, but also the guilt, feeling envious and sometimes jealous of their position, especially when it comes to Robb Stark. Jon, of course, joins the Night's Watch, and as the point of view character is key to the storyline Beyond the Wall with the others and the current political situation in the north in the wake of the War of the Five Kings, with Stannis garrisoning men at Castle Black, being elected Lord Commander of the Watch, and the choices he made as Lord Commander will likely have a huge impact on the direction of the story in the Winds of Winter. So much so, Jon is assassinated by his own Night's Watch brothers. But despite that, I think it's safe to say Jon will play a huge role in the story to hopefully one day maybe come. Ramsay Bolton, on the other hand, exemplifies many of the negative connotations that come with being a bastard, and why many in Westeros are fearful and skeptical of them. But what is interesting is, despite this, Ramsay is clearly just as insecure about his status, even after being legitimized, which mirrors Jon's feelings towards being a bastard. However, manifesting it in a very different way with Ramsay, it's clear that, like Jon, Ramsay's going to have a huge role in the northern plotline, should we ever see the Winds of Winter.